I never thought a single December would split my life into before and after. If you're still listening right now, I want you to know this isn't a love story. It's not a warning either. It's a confession. By the end of the story, one man lost everything: his marriage, his reputation, and almost his life. But the part no one talks about is how quietly it started. No shouting, no slammed doors, no obvious villain. Just a feeling I couldn't name at first. Have you ever looked at the person you love most and felt them slowly slipping away, even though they were standing right in front of you? That's where this begins. It was Christmas season. Lights everywhere, music in every store, people smiling like nothing bad could ever touch them. And inside our house, everything looked fine. That's the lie that almost destroyed me. From the outside, we were solid, comfortable, safe. But there was a moment, small enough to miss, that changed everything. It wasn't a fight. It wasn't a secret I found. Not yet. It was the way he stopped looking at me when he talked. The way his phone never left his hand. The way silence started filling rooms that used to feel warm. I told myself I was imagining things. I told myself love just changes with time, that this was normal. But deep down, there was a question I was afraid to ask. What happens when the person you trust most becomes a stranger without ever leaving the room? People think betrayal is loud. It isn't. It creeps in softly. It hides behind routines. It waits until you're tired, busy, distracted. And by the time you feel it clearly, it's already done damage. I didn't know it then, but something had already been set in motion. A decision had been made. A line had been crossed. And once that happens, nothing stays untouched. Not love, not memory, not even the future you thought was guaranteed. This story isn't about a bad man or a perfect woman. It's about how easy it is to lose everything without realizing you're standing on the edge. And to understand how this happened, we need to go back. Back then, our life looked like what everyone calls success. We lived in a place where hard work was supposed to lead somewhere, where effort meant security, where love was something you earned by doing everything right. He worked long hours. I told myself that meant he cared. I believed that sacrifice was proof of commitment. That's what we're taught, right? You grind, you push, you build something stable so you can finally breathe. We chased that idea together, or at least I thought we did. Every morning started the same way. Coffee brewing, the sound of the garage door closing, a quick kiss that felt more rushed each week. I told myself this was adulthood. This was marriage. This was the price of building a future. Bills don't wait. Dreams get expensive. And somewhere along the way, love gets put on a schedule. He was proud of being needed at work. I was proud of holding everything else together. That balance felt fair at the time. Friends would say, "You two are doing great." Family would say, "You're lucky." And I believed them. Because admitting something felt wrong would mean questioning everything we had built. And that felt scarier than staying quiet. In America, we're taught to endure, to keep going, to smile through pressure. You don't complain when things are good enough. You don't rock the boat when you've already come so far. So when nights got quieter, when conversations got shorter, when laughter felt forced, I blamed stress, deadlines, the economy, life. I didn't blame him, and I definitely didn't blame us. Looking back now, that belief was the trap. Because when everyone tells you this is normal, you stop listening to your instincts. You stop asking questions. You start shrinking yourself to keep peace. I thought love meant patience. I thought loyalty meant understanding without explanation. I thought if I just waited, things would settle. But comfort can be dangerous. Routine can hide rot, and silence can feel like stability until it doesn't. At the time, it all seemed normal. That's what makes this story so dangerous. Before everything broke, our life moved in patterns. Predictable, comfortable. Weekdays blurred together. Alarm clocks, traffic, coffee cups left in the sink. He left early, I stayed behind, cleaning up the quiet he left with him. I knew the sound of his car pulling away. I knew how long the house stayed warm after the door closed. I knew exactly when the silence would settle in. In the evenings, I cooked meals that tasted fine but felt empty. We ate side by side, not together. He talked about work, numbers, deadlines, people I'd never meet. I nodded, I listened. I told myself this was partnership. On weekends, we did what couples are supposed to do: groceries, laundry, short drives with music playing too low. Sometimes I caught myself watching him instead of listening, the way his smile came slower, the way his eyes drifted to his phone, the way his body felt present but his mind didn't. I remember one night clearly. We were sitting on the couch, holiday lights glowing through the window. A commercial about family played on TV. He laughed at something on his phone. I asked what was funny. He said, "Just work stuff." And that was it. No details, no follow-up, just a wall I didn't know how to climb. I told myself I was being dramatic, that marriage wasn't fireworks every day, that love matured into something quieter. But quiet shouldn't feel lonely. I still believed in our future then, in trips we hadn't taken yet, in conversations we'd get to someday. I believed if I stayed steady, everything else would follow. What scares me now is how normal it all felt. Because when nothing is obviously wrong, you don't protect yourself. You don't prepare for loss. You just keep living. Looking back now, the warning signs were already there. The moment everything changed didn't look dramatic. No yelling, no tears at first. It was a sound. His phone buzzing on the kitchen counter. We were getting ready for bed. Lights low, the house quiet. I remember reaching for a glass of water. I remember not meaning to look, but the screen lit up. A name I didn't recognize, a message that wasn't meant for me to see. Just a few words. Too familiar. Too late at night to be innocent. My chest tightened before my mind caught up. I didn't say anything right away. I watched his face instead. He saw it. He saw the way I froze, the way my hand stopped moving. And in that second, I knew. Because before I even asked, he started explaining. Too fast, too defensive. It's nothing. You're reading it wrong. You're tired. Every excuse landed wrong. I asked one question. My voice didn't sound like mine. Who is she? Silence. Not confusion, not surprise. Silence. That's when my body understood what my heart had been avoiding. He didn't deny it, not really. He said it didn't mean anything. He said it was just talking. He said it never got serious. But the words didn't matter anymore. Something cracked open inside me, something that couldn't be closed again. I felt heat in my face, ringing in my ears, like the room had tilted slightly off balance. I thought about all the nights I ate alone, all the times I blamed stress, all the moments I chose trust over instinct. And suddenly, none of it felt accidental. I didn't scream. I didn't cry. I just felt cold. He reached for me. I stepped back. That space between us felt wider than the house. In that moment, I realized something terrifying. The life I thought I was living was already gone. And from that moment on, there was no going back. After that night, nothing settled. Everything unraveled. I thought the truth would bring clarity. I thought once it was out in the open, we could at least see the damage clearly. I was wrong. The days that followed felt like walking through fog. He apologized, then he minimized, then he apologized again. The story kept changing. Some days he said it was a mistake. Other days he said he was lonely. Sometimes he said I was distant too. That one hurt the most. Because now I wasn't just betrayed, I was being slowly blamed. I started replaying every moment of our marriage in my head. Every late night, every time I chose patience over confrontation. Was I blind? Or was I just loyal? Sleep became impossible. My body was exhausted, but my mind wouldn't stop. I'd lie awake listening to his breathing, wondering who he was thinking about, wondering if he missed her, wondering if I was already replaceable. At work, I smiled when people talked about Christmas plans. At home, I stared at walls. He promised it was over. He promised he'd block her. He promised he wanted to fix us. But trust doesn't come back with promises. It comes back with consistency. And consistency was missing. He guarded his phone more than ever. He stayed later at work. He grew irritated when I asked questions. I felt like a detective in my own marriage, and I hated myself for that. Every time I asked for reassurance, I felt needy. Every time I stayed quiet, I felt weak. I was trapped between wanting the truth and being afraid of it. Friends noticed something was off. They asked if I was okay. I said yes, because admitting the truth out loud made it real. Money became another pressure. Therapy costs, bills, the fear of what would happen if we separated. I started calculating everything: time, savings, my own worth. I realized how much of my identity had been built around us and how little space I'd left for just me. Arguments became frequent. Not loud, sharp. Every conversation carried the weight of what he'd done, even when we talked about groceries. He'd say, "Can we just move forward?" As if moving forward required understanding where we were. I wanted to heal, but healing needs honesty. Then I found something else. An email he forgot to delete. A message that proved it hadn't stopped when he said it did. My hand shook as I read it. Not because I was surprised, but because I was tired. Tired of hoping, tired of guessing, tired of shrinking myself to keep the marriage alive. That's when fear turned into something else. Clarity. Because I finally understood this wasn't about one mistake. It was about patterns, choices, a lack of respect that had been growing quietly for months. And then something happened that made it worse. The truth didn't come from him. That's what shocked me the most. It came on a random afternoon, days before Christmas. Gray sky, cold coffee sitting untouched. I wasn't looking for anything. I swear that matters. I was using the laptop we shared, trying to print a return label. His email was still logged in. One notification popped up. Just one. A subject line that didn't belong to work. A name I knew now. A tone I recognized instantly. My heart started pounding before I even opened it. And when I did, everything finally made sense. This wasn't a mistake. It wasn't confusion. It wasn't loneliness. It was a relationship. Plans, jokes, memories I was never part of. There were messages about hotel rooms, about how hard it was to act normal at home, about how complicated I was. I sat there, completely still. No tears, no shaking, just this heavy realization settling into my chest. He hadn't just betrayed me. He had rewritten our marriage in his head and cast himself as the victim. All those nights I questioned myself, All those moments I wondered if I was overreacting, I wasn't. The truth was simple and brutal. He had chosen someone else's attention over my trust, someone else's excitement over our history, someone else's silence over my presence. And the worst part? He never planned to tell me. I closed the laptop slowly, like any sudden movement might shatter me. When he came home that night, I didn't confront him right away. I watched him hang his coat, watched him ask how my day was. His voice sounded normal, warm even. That's when it hit me. The betrayal wasn't just the cheating. It was the ease, the comfort, the way he could lie and still expect dinner, still expect kindness, still expect me. I finally understood something I hadn't allowed myself to see before. I wasn't fighting for a marriage anymore. I was fighting against someone who had already left and just forgot to tell me. When I did speak, my voice was calm. "I know," I said. He froze. No excuses this time, no stories, just the truth, standing between us. And in that moment, something shifted inside me. Not anger, not sadness, clarity. Because that's when I realized I had been wrong about everything. Everything collapsed quietly after that. No dramatic exit, no slammed doors. Just a slow, painful disintegration. He moved to the guest room, or sometimes didn't come home at all. I stopped asking which was worse. The house felt too big and too small at the same time. Rooms echoed. Silence followed me like a shadow. Christmas lights still blinked outside, cheerful and cruel. Cards arrived in the mail, smiling couples, perfect families. I couldn't bring myself to open most of them. At night, I lay awake staring at the ceiling, counting cracks like they were lifelines. My phone stayed dark. No messages, no one checking in. I didn't tell people right away. Shame has a way of sealing your mouth shut. I kept thinking, how did I miss this? How did I let this happen? Every memory felt contaminated. Vacations, anniversaries, inside jokes. I didn't know what was real anymore. I stopped eating full meals. Food tasted like nothing. Coffee made my hands shake. Some mornings I couldn't get out of bed. Not because I was tired, but because standing up meant facing a life I didn't recognize. I questioned my worth constantly. Was I boring? Too trusting? Too easy to leave? The mirror became an enemy. I'd look at my face and feel like it belonged to someone else, someone weaker, someone naive. Friends tried to help. They said the right things. "It's not your fault. You deserve better." But their words couldn't reach me. Pain has its own language. I replayed our last normal Christmas in my head. The laughter, the photos, the promises. I wondered if he was thinking about her now, if he missed her, if I was already erased. Money worries crept in next. Shared accounts, rent, the terrifying math of starting over alone. I realized how much of my life had been built around we, and how fragile that foundation really was. One night, after hours of staring into the dark, a thought slipped in that scared me. What if this is it? What if this pain never lifts? I imagined disappearing. Not dying exactly, just not being here anymore. The idea didn't feel dramatic, it felt quiet, comforting even. That's what frightened me most. I sat on the bathroom floor, wrapped in a blanket, listening to the hum of the heater. My phone was in my hand. I didn't call anyone. I didn't text. I just sat there, breathing slowly, trying to convince myself to stay. Because losing him was one thing, losing myself felt unbearable. That night, I cried harder than I ever had. Not for the marriage, not for him, but for the version of me that believed love was safe, that trust would always be returned. I felt stripped of identity, of certainty, of hope. And in that emptiness, with Christmas only days away, I understood how close I was to giving up. This was the night I almost did. The shift didn't happen all at once. There was no speech in my head, no sudden strength. Just a moment the next morning. I woke up on the couch, still wrapped in that same blanket. My body hurt, my eyes burned, and for the first time in weeks, I noticed the light. It was early, gray, soft. The world hadn't ended while I was breaking. That felt important. I went to the kitchen and poured a glass of water. My hands were steady. That surprised me. I didn't suddenly forgive him. I didn't suddenly feel hopeful. But something quiet settled in me. I realized I was tired of disappearing, tired of measuring my worth against someone else's choices, tired of waiting for honesty from a man who had already shown me who he was. I sat at the table and let the silence stay. No music, no phone. Just me. And for the first time, I asked a different question. Not, how do I fix this? But, what do I need to survive this? The answer wasn't dramatic. I needed space. I needed truth, even if it hurt. I needed to stop protecting someone who hadn't protected me. That scared me more than staying, because staying was familiar. Staying meant I didn't have to redefine myself. But I could feel something else now. A line forming. I didn't know where it led. I just knew I couldn't cross back. When he texted later that day asking if we could talk, my chest tightened. Old instincts kicked in. Fix it, smooth it over, be understanding. I stared at the screen for a long time. Then I typed one sentence. I'm not ready to talk until you're ready to be honest. I didn't add anything else. I didn't explain. My finger hovered before I sent it. That pause mattered. Because in that pause, I chose myself. Not in anger, not in revenge, just in truth. After I sent it, I cried again, but this time it felt different. Like release, like grief moving instead of stagnating. I didn't know what would happen next. I didn't know if I was strong enough for what was coming. I just knew I couldn't keep living half alive. We met 3 days before Christmas. Not at home. Small ground. A small cafe near the highway where no one knew us. The place smelled like burnt coffee and cinnamon. Holiday music played too softly to be comforting. He was already there when I arrived, hands wrapped around a cup he hadn't touched. For a second, I almost didn't recognize him, not because he looked different, because I saw him clearly for the first time. We didn't hug. We didn't smile. I sat down across from him and waited. Silence stretched between us, long enough to feel deliberate. Finally, he spoke. I'll tell you everything. My heart pounded, but my voice stayed calm. Don't tell me everything, I said. Tell me the truth. That stopped him. He looked down, then back up, and this time he didn't soften it. He admitted it had been going on longer than he said, that he didn't know when it started feeling real, that part of him liked being someone else with her. Each sentence landed like weight on my chest. I asked questions I never thought I'd have the courage to ask. Did you love her? Did you plan to leave? Did you ever think about what this would do to me? Some answers were messy. Some were honest. Some hurt more than lies. He cried. Not loudly, not dramatically, just tears sliding down his face while people around us laughed and ordered pastries. That contrast felt brutal. Then came the moment I hadn't prepared for. He said, "I want to try again. I'll do anything." Old me would have reached for that, clung to it, but something had changed. I felt the sadness, the loss, the years collapsing in my mind, but I didn't feel panic. I realized I wasn't afraid of losing him anymore. I was afraid of losing myself again. "I believe you're sorry," I said slowly, "but I don't trust you." The words hung there. "I can't promise forgiveness," I continued, "and I won't promise waiting." His face fell, not in anger, in understanding. That was the real consequence. Not yelling, not punishment. Clarity. We talked about logistics, money, space, time apart. It felt strange how practical heartbreak can become. When we stood to leave, he reached for my hand. I stepped back. Not to hurt him, to protect me. Outside, cold air hit my face. Cars rushed past. Life kept moving. I sat in my car for a long time before turning the key. Hands on the wheel, breathing slow. I didn't feel victorious. I felt empty. But I also felt grounded, because for the first time since everything broke, I wasn't reacting. I was choosing. And that choice changed everything. What happened after wasn't dramatic. No big announcements, no public decisions, just days stacking on top of each other, heavy and quiet. He moved out after Christmas. One suitcase, no arguments. The house felt different immediately, lighter, lonelier, both at once. I learned how loud silence can be when it finally belongs to you. Mornings became mine again. Coffee tasted stronger. Time moved slower. Some days I felt relief and hated myself for it. Other days, grief hit so hard I had to sit on the floor until it passed. Healing wasn't a straight line. It still isn't. There were nights I almost texted him. Habit is powerful. So is memory. But I didn't. I started therapy, not to fix the marriage, but to understand myself, to ask why I stayed quiet so long, why I confused endurance with love. Money was tight. I cut back, learned what I actually needed. Turns out, it was less than I thought. Friends became lifelines, not the ones who talked the most, the ones who listened without trying to solve me. I stopped explaining the story to everyone. I stopped defending my decisions. I let people think what they wanted. That was new. He reached out a few times. Apologies, updates, hopeful messages. I read them. I didn't respond. Not because I hated him, because I finally respected myself. Some nights I still miss the man I thought he was, the version of us that existed before truth showed up. But I don't miss the confusion. I don't miss shrinking. Slowly, my identity came back. Not as someone's wife, not as someone betrayed, just me. Stronger in places I didn't know could heal, softer in places I once guarded too tightly. I didn't get a perfect ending. I got something better, an honest life. And that changed who I became. If you're listening to this, I want you to pause for a second. Not for me, for yourself. Because this story isn't really about cheating, or marriage, or even Christmas. It's about what happens when the ground you're standing on quietly disappears. Most of us don't lose everything at once. We lose it slowly, in small moments we ignore, in instincts we silence, in truths we postpone because facing them feels too expensive. I stayed because it was easier than starting over, because history felt safer than uncertainty, because I thought love meant enduring pain without complaint. Maybe you've done that too. Maybe you've stayed in a job that drains you, a relationship that makes you smaller, a version of life that looks fine from the outside, but feels empty when you're alone. We're taught to be grateful, to push through, to not ask for too much. But no one teaches you what it costs to abandon yourself. What I learned is this: betrayal doesn't always come from other people. Sometimes it comes from the moments you choose silence over truth, comfort over honesty, fear over self-respect. The hardest part wasn't losing him. It was realizing how long I ignored myself to keep everything else intact. And here's the part I hope you hear clearly. You don't need a dramatic ending to choose differently. You don't need proof that everything is broken. You don't need permission to listen to the quiet voice telling you something isn't right. That voice is not weakness, it's awareness. I didn't rebuild my life overnight. I didn't become fearless. I just stopped disappearing. And sometimes that's the bravest thing you can do. If this story stirred something in you, don't rush to name it. Just notice it. Sit with it. Because this story isn't just about them. It's about what happens when everything you trust suddenly disappears.